Welcome to the February 14th, 2018 Neshoba Regional School Committee meeting, regular meeting. Happy Valentine's Day, School Committee. It's lovely of you to spend your Valentine's Day with us. We really appreciate it. Calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Tonight's meeting, we have one of our members is participating remotely. That is Kathy Codian, and according to the procedures, I need to let you know that she's participating remotely because she had a family illness. So given that, anytime we take a vote tonight, it will have to be by roll call, not just for our executive session. And I think that'll cover it. Are there any citizens' comments tonight? I see a citizen. No. Okay, thank you. Joan DeAngelis is sitting in for Superintendent Clenchey. Ms. DeAngelis is the Director of Pupil Personnel Services, and that also covers SPED, so thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate the guidance. I've got a couple of quick things under school committee chair updates. So, Alina, thank you for coordinating this. It looks as though we will likely need a meeting. I do not know if we're going to need more than one, so I'm not prepared. I'm looking at you because you always say, we need to have one every single week. And the members were polled as to whether February 21st or March 7th work, and we have 5 people who can do it can meet on the 21st, and 6 that can meet on the 7th. So we do have to vote to add a meeting. Let me just give you some perspective. Personally, if there's any way for us to do it on the 21st, I would like to, and the reason is because we have our public hearing on the budget on the 28th. So that will give us time to do a little bit more scrubbing. Plus, without the superintendent here, there are a couple things we're not going to be able to really dig down into tonight. So next week it would give us an extra week before the hearing. It is school vacation week, so if you are otherwise indisposed and you cannot make it, we certainly understand. That said, it really is the desire of the board as to when you want to meet. So, given all of that, and I just want to remind everyone, our budget needs to be approved per our regional agreement by March 14th. And we still have several things to get through. So I would ask someone to make a motion to add a meeting. I would love for it to be the 21st. Hint. Anybody?
Are we starting early that night? Or is that, I know that was one of the questions about whether we could start.
We would, it looks like 5:30 is the earliest we could start,
Okay.
given constraints.
That's what I needed to know.
I'm looking at this, and one individual has in a constraint and can't start until 5:30. So, given that, I would love for someone to make a motion to add a regular school committee meeting on February 21st, beginning at 5:30 p.m.
I move that the school committee holds a meeting on February 21st at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Elise, second.
Wait, I'm sorry, we have to do.
We're gonna do
I have
the
to say it
roll
out
call.
loud, right? I can't just raise my hand. Sorry, second.
Second, yes, thank you. Any concerns? I know a couple of you can't. You won't be here. I don't
I
think
won't be here.
Neil would be here, and Susan won't be here.
So you have to be on 5.
So that means that Steve and Mark and Kathy and Elise and I absolutely have to be here or we lose the quorum. So just keep me posted if something crazy comes up, okay? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote.
Can I make a suggestion?
Alina's
Since
right.
you've discussed
Oh.
it?
What's the 28th?
My suggestion would be that you make it for both, and then you cancel the March 7th.
I thought
if
about-
that's the case.
I thought about doing that.
If there's 5 and they can't make it, you don't have a quorum, you can't re-vote to have something put in for March 7th.
Yeah.
We could on the 28th.
Oh, yeah, you could.
Yeah.
I won't be there for that either.
I won't be here on the 28th either.
You won't be here on the 28th either. And Steve won't be here on the 14th. I got that one. Do you want to amend?
Sure. Is it the sense of the meeting that to put up both dates and then we can cancel one?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
So I move, withdrawing my motion, I move that the school committee meet on February 21st, is that right?
Yep.
And also March 7th, at a time to be specified in the meeting posting.
So the 21st would still be the 5:30 start time.
Okay, 5:30 on the 21st and the usual 6 o'clock on the 7th.
Yeah. All right, now do I need another second? Thanks, Elise. Okay, roll call vote. Lita. He's looking at me. Steve.
Yes.
And Mark.
Yes.
And Lorraine, yes. And Lynn. And Neil.
Yes.
And Elise.
Yes.
And Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Did you say that one was going to be deleted?
Pardon?
Did you say that one was going to be deleted if it wasn't needed?
Yeah, if we don't need the 7th, we'll remove it. Okay, so the other topic I want to share with you is, so we only have a couple more meetings obviously left, and I've received some topics from a couple of people on agenda items that you want to dig down deep into for the budget. I'm trying really hard to keep the next several meetings kind of clean and push off things that we don't have to do to keep that time for us to really dig into the budget. So I'm going to put this out there again. I know that the digital learning structure is one that we're going to be probably devoting a big chunk of time to at the next meeting. And what was the other one, Alita? That was a big, personnel ads. I've asked the superintendent to prepare, and we need this for the next meeting, a list of priorities, because we went into our workshop on that Saturday morning and we heard from all of the areas of the district and what the priorities and the needs were, but now we need to understand from the administration's perspective what those priorities are and what is recommended to be funded through the budget, because I think we all need to see what is it that we're talking about with these big numbers and what came off. I don't necessarily have to know, I don't think we have to know what came off, we have to know what stayed in, okay? So we will ask her to do that for us. And then I know that Pat Maroney is going to be bringing forward the insurance was the other one that was a big question as to what are we doing with insurance and the renewal of that. So that'll be coming as well. But if there's any other large topic, and I'm not asking for, something that can be answered through email and then we can get it out to the full committee, but if it's a topic that needs to be deliberated on, please let me know soon, because I don't want to wait till the 11th hour and not have the time that you need to have the discussion.
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Isabel, student representative report, do you have anything good?
Yeah, I have actually a good amount of exciting
Good.
stuff. So the first thing's from the band department. So I talked about the middle school students trying out for the Central District Junior Honors Ensemble a few weeks ago. And we have 12 students, 6 from Hale and 6 from Luther Burbank Middle School, that actually made the Central District Junior Honors Ensembles. So they earned their spots for more than 800 Central Mass students who tried out. And these students will now get the chance to work with some of the best music educators in the country and perform a concert together in the spring. Lastly, from that department, Hale Middle School will be putting on their production of Peter Pan Jr. from March 1st through March 3rd. From the athletic department, the Alpine ski team will be competing for the league championship tomorrow afternoon versus Lincoln Sudbury at Neshoba Valley. The Nordic ski team competed in the league sprints this week and are preparing for the state championship on February 27th. The boys and girls indoor track teams competed in the district meet last weekend, and we have students competing in the state championship on Sunday. The boys and girls swim team competed at the Central West Championship over the weekend. The girls finished 25th overall, and the boys team finished 10th overall. The boys have qualified for the state meet, and so they will be swimming this weekend at BU. The girls hockey team is 9-6 and hoping to clinch a postseason spot today. And the boys hockey team is improving as the season goes on, hoping to come in second place in the league to make playoffs. And the boys' last scheduled regular season game is this Friday at 8:10 p.m. The girls basketball team is 12-6 and qualified for postseason. The team celebrated senior night earlier this week. The boys basketball team is 8-9 and still fighting for a playoff spot. There's a really big game tonight against Maynard, so they have to win tonight to make playoffs. And on the boys basketball team, senior Justin Purse was able to score his 1,000th point last Friday night against Shepherd Hill, and so that makes him the second male in school history to score 1,000 points in the basketball team. The wrestling team is doing very well. They won the league title over the weekend, and they also won the MIAA Division II Central Mass Sectional title, and they'll be competing in the state tournament this Friday and Saturday. Lastly, the middle school basketball teams are excited for the Play Day, which is hosted at Neshoba on Friday for all 3 middle schools, and they play against each other. And then from Lancaster, the PTO and their middle school are working together to sponsor 2 cultural enrichment programs for their middle school students. The 6th graders are enjoying a presentation called Mythbusters, which is a program about ancient Greece. And the 8th graders will host a visit from the MFA Outreach Program. The Outreach Program introduces students to photography as a social witness program through their traveling museum collection. They'll examine images of early to mid-20th century America and learn how artists past and present use photography as a tool for documenting and seeking change on important social issues. Neshoba will be hosting its annual presentation regarding the academic program and course selection for 8th graders on Monday, March 5th in the auditorium. So taking in all the 8th graders from around the district, explaining how the process is in the high school. They usually have volunteers as well that guide kids and parents around the school, answer questions, things like that. And Neshoba's getting ready for the first winter sports pep rally on Friday. So after the success of the fall one, kids are really excited. So we'll be doing that last period on Friday.
Very good, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for
Where
Isabel?
will that pep rally be?
In the gym. Not outside this time.
No. Although,
I went through the traffic on that.
It was fun.
No, it wasn't.
well, the traffic wasn't, but the pep rally was really fun. Or what do we call that?
We call it the pep rally.
Well, it was fun. Okay, thank you. And thank you very much, Isabel. Appreciate that. We've got 2 items we've got 2 items under new business, and I know Principal Grady is here from Hale Middle School, and I wonder if I could ask a favor of you. Could we have our athletic director jump ahead of you? Actually, yours is really quick, so you know what? I'm gonna. Why don't you come on?
It is ladies first.
Yeah, but you know what? I appreciate that. Yours is so quick
Okay.
that it'll be quick. So, Principal Grady is our principal at the Hale Middle School, and he's here to talk to us about the Mabel Hale Fund proposal.
Right.
And we know that your letter is in the packet.
Right. My purpose in being here is to request your endorsement for continuing to pursue the Mabel Hale Fund, which was set up upon Mabel Hale's death in 1966, and it was established in 1975. Right now, there's about $9,700 in the Mabel Hale Fund for us to access. The way that the proposal started is I gathered with 2 parent representatives, a PTO representative, a faculty member, and myself to discuss different ways that we might utilize this money for the benefit of all Hale students. And one thing that seems to be lacking is some late buses to allow students to stay after school to participate in a variety of different after-school activities. It's common across the Commonwealth to have something like this, and we don't. And we're finding that a lot of students are kind of using town buildings, whether it's the library or they're hanging out in our lobby waiting for rides. And I think there's a lot of value in having students engage in academic and non-academic activities after school. I think it helps them feel more connected to school, and therefore they perform better. So the real purpose of this would be to apply the grant over the course of this year, next year, and hopefully future years, if we're thoughtful with how we spend the money, to go towards transportation, two late buses specifically. It will probably offset some of the different material needs that the clubs would have in order to run, whether it's frisbees for the ultimate frisbee teams, some archery equipment for the archery club, those sorts of things. I did meet with Ms. Rubenstein, who gave me his endorsement to come before the school committee So here I am.
Well, it's certainly an honorable thing to do with that money. I wish we could do that for all the schools. I'm really impressed with the fact that you want to use it for transportation to keep the kids at the school, so that's kind of cool. Does anybody have any questions? Because Lynn,
I'm under the impression the buses are really expensive. Is that enough to take care of the buses, the late bus?
So I can't speak specifically to the contracts that we have with the bus company, but I do know that the way that we've worked it with D-Bus is that they would provide us with 2 buses starting at 4 o'clock. They have to finish their runs by around 5, and each bus is $50 a run. So it's about $100. We would operate the after-school activities simply on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The other component is we have to staff it, so faculty need to be available. So we've really tried to narrow it and say, on Tuesdays and Thursdays are the days you're going to run your club. So it sort of helps us to manage the overhead costs and them being there as well as the buses. So it's
what's
two-
the issue?
Well, I know that we can't charge for busing, right? But is after school different than regular?
Why would
Not
we
if it's
do
a
that?
school- not if it's a
Well, no,
school
no,
sanction.
Why would we do
Not if
that?
it's school sanctioned, you
No, we can't charge.
can't charge, you can't charge, right?
So I was just wondering if school activities were different than.
If there's school activities, then it's not.
So it doesn't matter?
Yeah. We ran into that issue.
Okay. No, it just sounds like it's
No, good. You had a question?
Yeah, so it's twofold, maybe threefold. So the first thing, how does this overlay with extended day?
Extended day doesn't happen in the middle school level
Right.
at Hale.
Okay, all right,
They use our building,
right.
but they don't arrive until 3:40 usually,
Okay.
and there wouldn't be much of
And
a
so there's not,
for facility use, really none,
okay,
and it doesn't have any impact because they're elementary school kids coming up from second.
sure, yep. And then is this for the late buses, is this an ongoing annual thing? Or is this like, you've got the money now, so you'll do it now, and it has to be revisited next year, and hopefully there's funds available or something?
So the way I'm looking at it right now is this is simply a pilot, right?
Sure.
We've got about 50 students whose parents have said that they would be interested, and if need be, they would also pay a sort of pay-to-play fee down the road, should that be necessary. But right now, I think if we're thoughtful with how we use the money, and you looked at, there would be a total of 13 weeks where we would run a Tuesday, Thursday activity, and it's about $100 a week. That's $1,300, right? Simply for transportation. So some material items, things like that. I think we can extend the $9,700 well into next year. After that, I think really at the end of this year, we need to look at how it went, what our numbers were, how many programs we had. If there was 3 kids in a program, we might not need to run that program next year.
Sure.
So really, to answer your question, I think it's enough to get us through the remainder of this year and into next year. But going into next school year in the summer, I need to have another plan in place in order to have a contingency should we not have funds available in
I think
2021.
Neil,
So
you bring up a really
so
good point.
it's going to the
Yeah.
precedent, so if we're
Yes.
doing this for the one school, what does that mean for the district as far as, and I hate to use that word parity, but what does that do for the district and parents that may say, well, I live in Lancaster and I want my kid to be,
They don't have a
able to do
Maple
the
Hill
same
fund.
thing. I understand that, but if we're doing this and I just want to make sure that if we're doing this, we're not setting some sort of precedent that we now have to roll out to the whole district, and that it becomes a legacy thing that we end up losing. I think it's a great thing, and don't get me wrong, but I'm just on that.
But if you're using a fund to run a pilot, and it's very clear that, this is.
That's the expectation has to
Right,
be
this is
set.
the expectation. This is a limited pot of money. We're piloting this and seeing how it works and how, and then making decisions going forward. Then it's not setting an expectation that this is necessarily going to move out to
Right.
every school, in Lancaster and Bolton.
Are
Understood,
parents
but it's a
being
valid
told-
rationale.
Are parents being told that you're piloting and that you're gonna assume the cost of the bus, but it's a year-to-year thing? I think that that's the key, right?
I think that's the crux, but also, and I understand what Elisa's saying, and I tend to agree with that, but is there, once you set precedent, is there an argument, like a real argument, that parents can make in other schools saying, we need to have the same thing. I don't know that, and I'm just throwing that out there because that could be a can of
So
worms.
just,
And
I can respond with two things. So, one, I am aware that in Lancaster, at some time in the recent history, they were given over $10,000 to put into their student activity fund. And I don't believe that that money was shared with the other 3 towns. So I do know that it bolstered their student activity account to use for student activities. This is precisely what that would be. It would be a student activity. We're accessing nearly the same amount of money to use to run an activity program for kids. The second thing I would say is parents have been informed both in an official letter that was sent home in a mailer as well as an email that indicated the idea behind this program, that it is certainly a pilot program. And I think they know that also because we've made it clear that we're starting it halfway through the school year because we needed to get all these sort of things lined up. We surveyed families, and families said that immediately, right now, every family that responded said they would be happy to, and I can share that information, they would be happy to pay. I gave them a range, $25 increments from $25 to $100, and 60% of them said they would pay up to $100 a child to participate in an after-school program. So I think with that little nugget of information, I think it does enable us to think, well, down the road, should we need to incorporate this pay-to-play model, then we'd be able to do that. I can't speak to how the other activity funds are used in the other 2 towns.
No, it's just more the legal precedent that somebody could come in, and that was my only concern.
Can I ask a
Thank you.
question?
Yes, Kathy.
Okay, so, currently,
You need to come closer to the phone.
do I, or do you?
We can hardly hear you. Can you come closer to the phone?
Practice down my throat.
Can you talk louder?
Is the volume all the way up?
Not really.
No.
Not even worse now.
Yeah.
She was fine this afternoon.
You'll find when you started.
Did you turn the volume down on your phone?
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
No.
No, can you turn the volume up in your phone?
It's up, it's on.
There you
There you
go.
go.
There.
Is it good now?
Yeah.
I think it's on her end.
Okay.
It is on her end.
About,
Thank you.
there's close to $10,000 in Maple Hill. Will that money be used in totality for this pilot? Or are you gonna leave some money in the Maple Hill account?
No, let Kyle answer it. It's his question.
So the Mabel Hale Fund is available on an annual basis. The Mabel Hale Fund had not been accessed, in my knowledge, for the last 5 years. So that money had accrued over time, and we're
Right.
asking for the full amount to be placed in our student activity fund. And like I said, use it thoughtfully down the road to keep the program running for a number of years.
Oh, no, I get that, but if you use that money this year, what's left in the account? Or are you gonna close the account?
I believe there's $35,000 left in the account.
Okay, that's a good amount, okay. And then we have been talking about monies that have been left in student activities account at each of the schools. And I believe there's going to be a meeting with Pat to discuss the disposition. Is that money that you might utilize with this initiative?
No.
It's not in
No,
the
the
student activity account.
Okay.
It's not a student.
So can I just call a timeout for a second? So there's money that was allocated to this school in a grant by a individual that lives in that town. The money hadn't been accessed in 5 years. It's accrued. The
Yep.
principal's asking to have that money utilized. This isn't just to you, Kathy. This is to the room
Oh,
too.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. The principal is, what'd you say? The principal is asking, could I please have the money that's been accrued that's sitting there and use it for something wonderful for the children? And frankly, my answer is yes, thank you, as long as and everyone gets a vote, but as long as the parents know that you may not be able to do this, because to Neil's point, we don't want to set a precedent where all of a sudden we're paying for after-school buses. While that would
Got
be
it.
wonderful, we've got our own issues with regional transportation being reimbursed because it's been woefully under reimbursed from the state for years since we got the original promise.
Yeah, I just
So-
wanted to know how much money was in the account. So the answer
Right.
is, there's a base of $35,000. Typically, you would take the interest from that every year and do something. It has accrued for at least 5 years, and this is an amount that would be spent to pilot this program, which I think is a great idea.
Okay. Does anybody have, I almost, Mark, sorry. Mr. Jones.
You're thinking of expending somewhere in the vicinity of $2,000, more or less, in the coming remainder of the year? Is that the vicinity of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain exactly what we'll have for material costs,
Yeah.
but the goal would be to spend.
2 to 3 maybe,
Yeah.
something like that, so that you expect you'll have funds available to continue the pilot as an experiment,
Absolutely.
money permitting. It looks like money is likely to be permitting at least one to 2 more years.
Absolutely.
Right.
And this will cover the stipends and everything that you need to have done.
That, it will not cover all the stipends. We will certainly need to, now, to have the pay-to-play model. So if there's students who are involved, we need to, I have 51 families that have responded that are interested, some on Tuesdays and Thursdays, some on Tuesdays. And we need to, my plan of action is to get get faculty interested in supervising, to get busing organized, to access the Mabel Hale Fund, and then to find out exactly the number of students who have signed up and signed permission slips, and have a charge for them to offset the cost of a stipend for each faculty member.
Okay. Any other questions? Can we give this man the money that should belong to that school?
And this is separate than the regular activity stipend?
Yes.
Yes.
Funds? Okay.
Yes.
So I move that we endorse the request of the principal to apply for Mabel Hale funds in the amount of $97.96 and to transfer to the Student Activities Fund of his school, which is the
Hale.
Hale School in Stowe. And I
Thank
guess
you.
that's it.
Thank you. Wait a second.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote unless someone has something else they want to share with us. I'm a yes. Elise?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yep.
Mark?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes,
And Neil?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
very
in.
much. That makes
very
us-
nice. Good job.
Kathy.
What?
All right, we're moving on. We're going to ask Tanya Rich, our athletic director, to come forward. She has, so I'm moving this one item from old business, which, and Neil, I'm going to turn it over to you as the chair of the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee, and then we'll go back to our Human Resources update, as long as school committee, you're good with that, if I can move those items around. Thank you. All right, so we're going to take one piece of Budget and Warrant Subcommittee items in this section of the meeting, and then we'll do the other 2 items after, when we move back into our regular agenda.
Okay, so we've gone back and forth extensively, and as you know, Tanya's been to school committee 2-3 times, something like that, with crazy amounts of information, crazy amounts of time that she spent. And we came to some conclusions in B&W that we're passing forward as a recommendation to the school committee. That is the following. So the current user fee right now for each individual sport per season is $150 per student. There's no cap that exists, so you could have 9 children at home, they could all have 3 seasons of sports, and they're paying the entire boat. And that's a lot. So in taking a look at that, where fees are, and right now we know that the average user fee amongst the Mid-Wachusett League of schools, which is what we're part of, is $210 per sport. So we haven't made any adjustments to this model for years. I think you said you were like in 2nd grade or something like that when, yeah. So we're suggesting the following. We're suggesting a new fee structure per student in which the first sport would, instead of $150, be $175. The second sport would be, which is a $25 difference from where we are. The second sport would be $150, which is 0 movement from where we are. And the third sport would be $125, which is actually a $25 deduction from where we are right now. So if you have a child that plays all 3 seasons, there is 0 increase with this. We are looking at a $900 per year family cap that we'd like to put in place. It excludes the extra funds that may be involved in certain sports, such as swimming, pool time, hockey, ice time, skiing tickets, things like that. Those are still going to be the same. Free reduced lunch would be the standard that we come up with as far as, and maintain, as far as having your fees waived. And then high school and middle fees together would not be combined for the family cap. So it would be exclusively for high school that we'd be talking about the cap for. Middle school user fees would stay status quo, no family cap, and again, the free reduced lunch for the waiver. You know, that's kind of where we are. We're still, even with the proposal, under that $210 considerably at the high. This, you know, it's a benefit for kids to play 3-season sports. Go for it. You know, you're not going to pay 1 dime more than you are now. It doesn't make this huge difference as far as what it comes down to the district in overall dollars based on the number of students that we have in each category. But it does make enough of a difference for it to be able to afford perhaps an entire team of uniforms. And that is a nice offset from where we are, and that does add up over time. So that's where we are as far as the recommendation.
So I have comments, but I want to see if anybody else has before I, Lynn.
I think it's great that it's standardized, but if you play 3 sports at 150, it's 450. If you do this, it's still 450, so there's absolutely no change.
Right.
There's a cap, so you're bringing in less money for the people that were paying over that, and I actually like the cap. But what does that do for supplementing the sports? It sounds like we're going to be supplementing more.
No. So as far as the entire, if you take all the numbers that we have of the students that are involved, Tanya was so kind to break it down, the number of students per season, per sport, per family, and it is a handful of families that are truly affected by the cap at this point. And the overall net difference after a year with all the kids all in with the programs, assuming that, you know, the numbers don't change, it's a $5,200 increase for the entire district over that time. Okay, so there's not a loss of money. Yes, there's not a loss. There's actually a gain in revenue, and it's nominal, and it still stays well under the $210 average. And then we had talked about, and I don't think we included it in our vote, but we had talked about, and we should probably discuss it here, is what do we do moving forward as far as making sure that things stay in line as far as rates go? And do we tie something to it, like let's say the teacher salary increases, for instance, if it's a 2% per year, then that's how you would adjust because you're paying on stipends and so forth, so you would adjust that perhaps and tie that into the fees. So the fees would be revisited each year, and they'd go up basically as a COLA adjustment rather than, you know, the school committee getting together every 5 or 6 years and making a big difference. So you're talking about $1 or $2, $5 a year or whatever that makes the difference.
The increase in family cap also?
Well, no, you'd have to revisit that.
Okay, Kathy, do you have any comments?
No, I think, you know, Neil captured, I like the plan for the increase, but I think we had talked with regard to other fee-based things, like, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, like preschool and maybe some other things that, again, instead of keeping things the same for so many years and then hitting folks with a big increase, we figure out a way, and probably can't do it, for this year, but to look at a formula or a way to increase it every year gradually based on COLA increases to our costs, specifically for salaries, benefits. I don't know what that is, but I think that's something that the school committee should work on.
And to be clear, we're not recommending that we do the adjustments for year over year right now, that we're talking about the fees themselves right now that we're talking.
Mark?
I, as a member of the Budget and Warrant Committee, voted to bring it to the school committee so that we could discuss it, but I actually am not in favor of the proposal. In my view, I would rather see the fees go down. I'm concerned about all the families in the bottom third of the economic scale, which includes a lot of people not in the lunch program. I'm in favor of the administrative changes, at least starting a family cap, and I think it's reasonable to skew the fees by sport to slightly cheaper for the second and third sport. But in general, I think it's going in the wrong direction, and I would vote against the proposal.
That's interesting.
And family cap, does that include children in middle school and high school,
No,
or just high
high
school?
school.
Now, let me spell it out.
Elise, do you have any thoughts?
I do. Yeah, I mean, getting to sort of what Neil was saying and Kathy too, I would really like to see some, if we are, as we talk about fees, some sort of very standardized and very clear methodology for making increases, and whether that's every so often we survey all the other districts around us and kind of, like you do when you're looking at salaries. Do our salaries match other industries? Okay, no, they don't. We need to bump people up. But have it be very clear and very intentional instead of, waiting 5 or 6 years. So I do think that, I do agree with that. I would like to see that happen. And I mean, I feel what Mark is saying. I understand the need to charge fees, but I also understand that there are those people that fall in that gap of they may not qualify for free and reduced price lunch, but this may also be a big stretch for them. And I'd hate to see any kid not participate in sports because of financial issues.
I would tend to agree with Elise on her comments. I agree with Mark that we need to index it in some way, the cost, but once again, we have this group that kind of falls between the floorboards, and I think there has to be some consideration whether, don't go away, and whether what we need to do is to look at these people. How do we do it? How do we identify people who may need help? We don't want to shut their children out of these athletic programs. And now I'm going to ask, the reason I didn't ask
The
her.
young lady that wants to get to the basketball game.
Well, I understand, but I'd like to.
So make it a quick
But
question.
as a student whose parents probably pay
Yes.
athletic fees,
Yes.
I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Well, I think that, I'm a student athlete. I played 3 sports my freshman year, and then I played 2 sophomore year, and then I stuck with field hockey all throughout my high school career. But I have a younger sister who plays no sports, but she does all of the theater, musical, anything that you can sing or play an instrument, she does. So I think that it's also important to remember with the user fees going up, I've never heard of someone who desperately could not make a team. I know we also have a boosters club who is they're always fundraising, and I don't know if a student could ever go to the boosters club and say, I don't have the funds, I'm not free reduced lunch, but I need the extra, whatever that, maybe it's the extra 50. Boosters always has provided teams with things they need. Boosters, whenever any team goes field trip or does a day out, if somebody on the team can't make it, and the team can't cover it, they can always go to boosters and say, listen, we have a few kids who couldn't make it to this walk or fundraise for that. So we do have another option, I guess, besides the athletic department. And I think that we have a very not sports oriented culture, but people want to play sports in high school. So I think that by promoting having the not stilted, but the phased out system, tiered system, that's super helpful. I know that my parents obviously wanted me to play sports, but by the third season, it's a little like, whoa, okay. So I think that that's important to consider.
That's really good perspective.
She needs to be on the school committee.
Right? How old are you? You could run.
Does she live in Bolton? We may have an opening.
So, what? No.
Who's running?
All right, so moving on.
You sit there talking to me.
Moving on, let's get it back under control here.
Can I make one
I-
more comment on this?
Well, yeah, you can
On
as
the-
soon as I give my opinion.
Oh, I'm so, I
Thank
apologize.
you, I appreciate
I thought it was
that.
just moving on like.
So, I thought I knew where I stood on this. I really did. And I don't. And I will pick a side. I will. I don't like the idea of anybody having to pay for sports at all, but the reality is it's an expense and we can't assume it in the budget right now. I also like the fact that I think it's interesting that we went into this, we all went into this thinking we need to get these fees, at a more competitive rate. And where we ended up is not really substantially different.
Right.
And it isn't even near the Midwatch average, which I know we try to do that with any cost recovery type program. But what I would say is I could get behind this if the administration would take under advisement what Neil is suggesting and what Elise is suggesting, which is, could you come to us with a recommendation on how you would see starting at these numbers and then continuing to index it? And what would it be tied to? And it would be something, Pat, that we would want you to be involved in, because that's what's happening with all of our fee-based services. And I think we shouldn't be looking at them in silos. There should be a cohesive, across the district perspective. So I would say, would you please work with folks to figure out what that would be, and then they can bring it to budget work? Yes.
Just two further things for perspective too, because this has been so long ago.
Yeah.
That this has been raised. You've got to consider the stipends and everything else that was offered way back when this was originally in there, much lower than what we're paying now for the stipends. So those costs have continually risen while we haven't touched the fee, number one. And number two, we're very fortunate to have an awesome athletic director here, and I'm just saying that because you're here.
Thank you. Okay.
But the point being, our teams go on to play tons of additional championship things, and those are additional funds that cost us for busing and everything else. And so we have to think about that too. So those are some pretty hefty costs that get thrown in the more successful we are.
Into
And
the budget.
So again, $5,200 is not huge, but it is definitely a drop in that bucket.
Okay, and so, thank you for that. And one other thing, you mentioned the family cap. I'm going to take this opportunity. Exclude swimming, hockey, and skiing. So what is there? There is no cap for those additional sports, because it's understood that when you get involved in those sports that it's more expensive. Most people that have kids who swim in high school competitively have swum. Hockey is the same thing. This year has got to be the year that I'm not comfortable with that hockey expense in the budget. And I'm going to go on record right now and say that there needs to be an adjustment in what's passed through the budget. And it's not just hockey, it's what all three of those sports. Because when you get to the high school level, if you have been, and I know you don't agree with me on this, and it's okay, we can talk about it, but I know that when you get to the high school level, you have been participating in those sports all along, and it's not basketball, and it's not track and field. So as a family, you pay more to participate in those sports. So when you get to the high school and now you're on the high school team, I can see where that that drops, and it does, it drops considerably. It's not, $1,800 a year, $3,000 a year for your kid to swim. It's $400 a year, $500 a year. And and the swim fee covers that. I know that personally, but the hockey thing with the 20,000 or whatever it is that the budget eats up, and I know that the last time you came before us, you said it was like an additional 600 was passed along. But I think you need to look at that number this year, because I don't think it's fair that the cost of an expensive sport is offset by other people's pulling their money.
We changed this year in the budget though, so only the game ice is going through the budget. All the practice ice is going through the user fee.
So what's the difference?
Off the top of my head, it's probably like $8,000 for game ice, and then the rest of it's practice ice, which is it's going straight out of the user fee expense line.
And I'm sure that's not palatable because it's another shift, but I think as far as fairness is concerned. So, does anybody else have any comments about that before I stop?
I mean, my only thing is on the other side. Football, for instance, generates a ton of money. But we don't proportionally give that ton of money to football. That goes into a general fund, and then that offsets a lot of other things. So if we're going to take sort of that approach, I think we need to look at both sides and say, well, if this is generating money, maybe they deserve to have more coming to them than what they have now.
If what's generating money? Football is
Football,
generating?
for instance, is generating money, and we were getting new equipment that's been held together with rubber bands and chewing gum for like the
Right.
tackle machines or whatever. But really, if we were using the money that they were generating, we could have paid for that 10 times over. They could have the top of the line equipment for what's actually being generated, but we don't operate that way.
No.
You know what I mean? So I'm just saying I don't think that there is a complete parity between, there
No.
can't be on certain
No.
ones, expense and revenue side.
But do you understand what
I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I totally do. And I don't disagree with it. I'm just saying I think it's a big nut to try to figure out. I know.
I just think that,
I'm with you.
fencing, if we were doing fencing, think of another sport that's extraordinarily, but you get involved in those types, especially something that's such a high skill sport like hockey, because it's not just about hitting the puck, it's about skating, right? And so you don't just go to high school and start playing hockey. So that's why I'm saying this is not like a surprise. And it is still much lower than, and again, I would, but I still think there are some sports that, all right, so I think we're done. But anyway, given all that, thank you, I appreciate that.
So what you just asked Pat to do, is that a policy issue?
No, that's not a policy issue, it's just something that we've asked Pat to do as the budget, as the, you're the business officer. And we've asked her to look at working with the folks that are in situations like the athletic director is, to come up with a structure and a strategy about how we're going to maintain our fees and what's the rationale around maintaining those fees moving
Yeah.
forward.
The quick thing that we're going to add, because this is, we also discussed this, and this is separate, is the physicals. So you have some families in the district that have a very hard time trying to afford the physicals. So we waive
Annual
the fee.
physicals?
Yes, that are required. So we waive the fee for them to participate in the sport, but then they still have to go get that physical. And that could be quite costly, especially if they don't have insurance or whatnot. So it's maybe a little preliminary, but the administration was taking a look at how many people that actually affects, and then if there are contract rates that might be available with minute clinics, or perhaps even through the physician that we have, where we could actually bring, they would get perhaps whatever it is, a voucher, so or somebody would come here, they'd be able to get those physicals. So those people don't walk away from the sport
Right,
because they can't afford the physical.
right. Ugh. Right.
So we're looking at, we may come back with that recommendation at a later point if it works.
And I think that gets to what Mark is kind of leaning towards, which is give everyone a chance.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Does any other conversation about this, or can someone make a motion? Who would like to make a motion?
What, a motion to table this discussion?
No? Does anybody want to make a motion to adopt what's in front of us, or does anybody want to make a motion to amend what's in front of us?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed user fee schedule of 2018 as listed in the materials.
Is there a second? Elise?
Yes, sorry, second.
Okay, any more conversation on this? Kathy?
No,
Anyone? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Elise?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Lynn? Mark?
No?
Kathy?
yes,
Neil?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that was, how many of us are there? 5-2-0. 5 for, 2 against, and 0 abstentions, and the motion passes. All right, thank you. Thank you for the work. Appreciate it. Thank you, Budget and Warrant. That was great. Appreciate it.
You get 9 minutes.
Are we good? Okay, let's move on. We're gonna jump back now to human resource updates. And we're gonna ask Anne Marie Stoika, our Director of HR, to come forward and share whatever she's got.
thank you. Excuse me, Lorraine?
Yes, Kathy?
Yeah, is there a document that goes with this presentation?
No.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see one in the packet slot.
Okay, Kathy, we really need you, I don't know, maybe your audio went down again, but it's hard to hear you. So we're gonna move forward and
Okay.
just, that's better. Okay, go ahead, Anne Marie.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update from the Human Resources Office on our positions and on our rates of attrition. For the number of, as far as positions go, we've got about 539 employees. We've got 326 Unit A employees. Roughly, there are about 75 in each town in the middle and elementary school. And then there's about another 100 that are either at the high school or in district, what we would consider district-wide positions. Speech teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, people who travel from school to school. So those are 326 Unit A'ers. The Unit C has got about 170. The bulk of them are instructional assistants. There's about 90 instructional assistants, close to 30 custodians, 29 custodians, 22 in our food service program, and then 14 each in the extended learning program and our administrative cadre, the secretaries, the administrative assistants, and the registrar. In addition to the Unit C'ers and the Unit A'ers, we've got 43 people who are unaffiliated with the association, people who are on individual contracts, principals, superintendent and her cabinet, the coordinators, electrician, and then the people in the business office besides Pat. Well, Pat is in the cabinet, and the people in my office and Joan's office. So that's our 539 people. On the attrition side, we've had 18 people who have left us since the start of the school year. We had 13 people who resigned since the start of the school year. We had 4 people who retired between September and now. And then, of course, our beloved Janice Kerrigan, who we're said to have lost last week. And just say that without crying. At the end of this year, we're anticipating 8 people retiring. We've got 6 teachers who have announced their intention to retire firmly. We've got, just yesterday, we got a phone call from someone who's seriously considering retiring, not 100% sure, but leaning very heavily in that direction. We'll know more as the time goes. And then we have 1 teacher who has announced her intention to retire early next school year. So in October, she'll be retiring. So 6 this year for sure, maybe 1, and then 1 in October. I'm imagining that must be on the person's birthday. So those are our 8 anticipated leavers for the end of the school year.
So one of the questions we have for you is, are there any new positions? Can you give us an overview of any new positions that are being asked for in this budget?
Well, the budget process is still ongoing, so I don't have firm handle on what those positions, which ones will survive at the end of the budget, so that will be something that will still be to be determined still.
So we need an update on that for next school committee meeting when the superintendent's back. An understanding of what the new positions are that will be.
On the 28th or the 7th?
The next meeting is the 28th. Yeah.
It's not the 21st meeting.
The 21st, or, no, she could do it on the 20th.
That's next week.
Yeah, the next meeting is the 21st because we added it. She could do it on the 21st. If she doesn't know, she and I will talk. But we need to hear what they are soon because they impact the budget. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Mark?
Question. Are there some number of positions, for whatever reason, are vacant because of decisions in recent years, or perhaps a number of years, have not been filled and are authorized but budgetarily have not been filled because of various good reasons?
The only position that's coming to mind that's been vacated, and it was very recently, and we're not in the process of refilling, is a position in our teaching and learning department. Beyond that, each of the people, just going through my head to see if this is correct, I think each of the people who have left this year have either been replaced or we're in the process of coming up with replacements, yes.
Thank you.
Steve?
The people who have indicated retirement, are these over and above would these positions be over and above the new positions requested in the original budget proposal?
No, they weren't. We
We didn't, I mean, we may have known that they were
in
retiring.
the new contract.
No. In the new budget proposal, there were a number of FTEs that were requested. Are those FTEs, are
Accounted
any of
for?
them because of anticipated or known retirements that we already had in place?
I don't believe that to be the case.
That, okay.
So replacements is what you're looking for. Neil and Lisa Lynn. Kathy, do you have any questions?
No,
All right, thank you so much for your
More
update.
than welcome.
Appreciate it. Check the box. Okay, we're gonna jump back down to the FY19 budget update, and Pat Maroney's gonna come forward. And then Neil, we're gonna jump back on the budget more, so, thank you. So what would you have us look at?
So, there is a PowerPoint presentation, or there are some slides, and it says fiscal year 19 budget changes. It's the 1/20/18 budget workshop.
Got it.
We'll be bringing that up. So at the time of the budget workshop, we were projecting at that point a 7.38% expenditure increase. And we have some changes that we've made. We've reduced that increase to a 5.99% expenditure increase.
So that is not the town assessment, that is
No, it
the
is
budget.
not.
So I just
This
want to make
is
sure
the-
to make that clear.
Right, this is not the assessment.
Okay.
So the way that we got to this is we looked at some, at staffing, and we determined some staffing efficiencies across the board, based on enrollment and some other changes that needed to be shifting of positions or whatever, and we came up with $178,959. Health insurance, we've looked at what we have, what I had originally presented, and the insurance company had come back with a decrease, and that is what is represented here, 118,000 savings, and just the changes
This
on
year.
our, right, just so far,
This year.
right.
What's our
projected
total-
rates?
What's our total health care for the year? What's that line item?
It's 500, 5
Million.
5 million,
Yeah.
rather, 500, 5 million, over 5 million. And so, anyway, going forward, I want you to know that we've we've come up with an advisory committee, an insurance advisory committee, and we have representation from our unions and some administration people here in the office, and we're looking at the existing plans, and we're trying to determine if we can save both the employees and the district some money by reducing some of the costs and looking at efficiencies in the plan and comparing them to what other communities are offering to their teachers and staff. And does anybody have any questions about that?
No. And you're on the agenda to give us an update.
Yes,
In an
I
upcoming
am on
agenda
the-
before the budget's done.
Right, I should have some new numbers, some fresh numbers from the insurance company, because we're in a kind of a different situation than some districts. Their renewal rates are as of July 1st. Ours are as of September 1st, which aligns more with our hiring for teachers. The July 1st rates are out. That's why we have a really good estimate as to what our rates will be, but we won't have concrete numbers probably for another couple of weeks. And so, and going through this process with the advisory committee, we're hoping to look at maybe a better rate and save some money like I just spoke to you about.
Yeah.
So facilities, we looked at all of the different lines in the facilities budget, and we determined that we could probably save $100,000. We've shaved about $100,000, you know, to bring us down to this 5.99%. Out of district tuition, Joan presented a tuition for a student to me and said, here I have somebody that we're bringing back into the district that we can service the needs of the student rather than have somebody else outside the district at a higher cost. So, thank you, Joan.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Because I think it's really important to hear Joan's perspective on out-of-district placement, in-district placement.
Sure.
We haven't talked about this, but I've heard you talk about this before. So right now we're talking about out-of-district tuition within the context of the dollars. But that's kind of that's after the fact. So Joan, can you talk about your philosophy on students in district, out of district?
Sure. I always think about less restrictive environment first. So IEP teams drive decision making. However, as you know, we've added some in-district programs, so we have more programs to offer students in district. And we're always trying to keep kids in because we know once a student is out and they provide a level of service, that becomes the focus of whatever the identified disability and concern is. And the concern I have with that sometimes is the level of academic rigor becomes secondary. So I think we have both here. We have great special ed services to provide students. We have therapeutic services. We have related services, but we also have the academic rigor that parents are looking for students to also engage in. So we're always keeping that in mind when we're thinking about programming for students.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, moving on. Instructional technology. In each of the schools, there's a line called instructional technology in which they purchase anything from software to additional needs or wants that are technology related, whether it be I don't know, camera or something to do with technology in their classrooms. We looked at that. We looked at the spending and decided that maybe we should cut back a little bit on that. The budget at the district level that Suchi manages, he puts forward per dollar, I believe it's $9 per student in his budget to cover many expenditures. And I think that that's sufficient. And we're still leaving a little bit in each of the schools just so that if they do have that software that they're using that's school specific, that they would still have the opportunity to do that. But we really looked at that with a fine-tooth comb and determined that we could save $32,610 on that. And moving on to capital for the high school, the leach field, which we're going to have a report out on the 28th of February. I'm meeting with DEP next Wednesday in Worcester, and I'm going to talk to them about how we're going to proceed as far as the engineering component, which is about $50,000, which still remains in the budget. And then the $250,000, we're hoping that they will allow us to put that off to the following summer, because this work, again, can only be done during the summer months because it involves storage and treatment of storage, and people can't be in the buildings when that's happening. So, and that's how.
What happens if they say no?
Well, we'll have to look at something else then.
Well, we could always take it out of, not that I want to, E&D. No, I know we don't want to, but I worry that we've had 2 years to get it done, and we haven't done it, and now we're gonna ask them if they could, it would be great if they would grant it to us, but if they don't, then.
Well, we have several alternatives that we can look at. One of the things I did was I had a treasurer, Vicki Chadia, reach out to a bonding advisor, a bond counsel rather, and see what it would look like if we were to finance that over 5 years. And again, we would have to go to the towns, you know, go through the proper channels with this and finance it maybe over a few years. But I'm thinking that we probably won't have that big $250,000 in this budget.
Thank you.
So one other thing, does anybody have any other questions about this amount and how the percentage changed or anything?
Is it the, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you call on me?
Yes, you're gonna have to make sure your volume is up.
Okay. The staffing efficiency,
We can't hear you.
if you cannot hear me?
The other.
So Kathy, we gotta make sure your volume is up. You might have to get on another phone because we need to make sure that people can hear.
Can you hear me okay now?
No.
No.
It's the only phone, gang.
It was good until you said, "Can you hear me?"
Right, we're not gonna spend a lot of time on this.
All right.
Well, she's reporting back out on us, isn't she?
Can I take you the question?
No,
No. All right. You can't hear me at all?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Staffing efficiency, does that amount take into account the people that are retiring and the difference between their salaries and what we would hire at Mutual at?
Yes, in some cases.
What does that mean in some cases?
Well, I don't know exactly how to put this. We looked at enrollment, and in some cases, based on enrollment, we may not have to bring people back because we just don't need them, because we're still within our enrollment criteria. And in
Yep.
doing that, you know, that's where we've come up with the bulk of this money. So, and then we also looked at some efficiencies, like with the retirees, if somebody comes in at a lower rate, some of them are a little bit higher, and when they come in at a lower rate, we know we're going to pick up a little bit of money there too. So this is basically the number that we came up with.
Okay, Mark.
On the facilities topic, how many vehicles are possibly not going to be purchased compared to the first draft budget?
How many are not going to be purchased?
Right. I mean, did you cross off one or two or more?
Both of them.
Both of them. Right.
Both
I
of
have
them.
a little bit of concern because I know members of the administration have had some concern themselves about all of the vehicles and being
Right.
able to turn them over at appropriate time. So I think that will be a continuing challenge,
Right.
and we
It is a
all
challenge.
wish not to have an emergency when the vehicle's not working
Right.
at all.
Okay. You want to go ahead? And then you've got your,
I have some,
each town's capital request. I don't
Yes.
know that we want to get into all the minutia on the capital request. If you've all reviewed it before coming to the meeting tonight and you have a question, ask it now. Otherwise, it might be helpful if you haven't had a chance to review it to funnel your questions. And we'll gather them all up and get them over to Pat, but I would ask that you would do that by Friday because Pat's working 24/7 on the budget. So if you could please get all of your questions on any capital requests for any of the towns, send them on over and we'll get them all over to Pat at one time. And then I'll make sure that everybody gets every question and every answer, not just the individual that asked it. Does that work?
and one other thing too, the revolving fund balances. I had brought this report to Budget and Warrant a few months back, and I think this kind of got lost in the shuffle. I have a list of stagnant accounts that need to be, rolled into a different account. And I have them listed where I'm going to close them to. Here's the full list of the accounts, and this is as of the end of fiscal year 17, so this would be as of 6/30.
So this is tied in with, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So this is tied in with the vote that we took last school committee for,
Budget and Warrant.
no, we took one in the
Oh.
school committee for getting rid of any of the dormant funds.
Oh, yes.
For you guys just to identify that, get back to us what you're going to do with the disposition. So that's what this kind of is?
That's what this is.
Okay, because we did that in last school committee. We voted to allow the administration, or we voted to instruct or whatever. Direct the administration to get rid of dormant funds and then report back on the disposition.
And the student activities will be next one that I bring forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's
That it?
for me.
All right, thank you. Neil, we're going to jump, and I think, Pat, you probably want to stay.
Yeah, I'll stay.
Okay. I think we're going to jump down to the OPEB recommendation from the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee. Can you give us a quick overview of where we're at and if there's anything you need from us?
Yes, so we've got, under old business here, we've got OPEB recommendation, funding and establishment of trust. So, this is just an ongoing thing that just has a lot of tendrils. We made a recommendation, we voted to recommend to the school committee today that we engage Prim, who was the last group that made their presentation, in the establishment and helping us establish a OPEB trust. We didn't vote to recommend engaging Prim as the manager of said trust because we kind of have to adopt the legislation first in order to create the trust. So very quickly, I'll read this. So we need to take a vote as a school committee, which would be the next step. And they would help guide us through this process, but we hereby accept the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 20, Mass General Laws, amended Chapter 28, the established other OPEB employment benefits liability trust fund, the OPEB fund. We have a line item, but not a trust fund right at this point, so that's where it's taking us. That in accordance with the Act, Neshoba Regional School District hereby designates the treasurer of said Neshoba Regional School District to serve as custodian of the OPEB fund. Then we resolve as to what that fund is, so that would be that line item getting transferred into as the appropriate as the initial investment to the OPEB fund. Then, and this is all one vote that we will be taking for this, and this is the part that we need to have a conversation about, make decision down the line, and that is the following person or persons shall be designated as trustee or trustees of the OPEB fund. Insert either A, the custodian of the OPEB fund, or the retirement board of Neshoba Regional School Districts, or the name of 5 to 13 individuals, at least one with investment experience, one with citizen of governmental unit, one employee of the governmental unit, one retiree of the governmental unit, and one officer of the governmental unit. And then we make a final vote to move all of that forward. And that's essentially the process of setting things. Once that's done, and we've met our checklist, which has about 12 items on it, which this pretty much covers what I just read, then we can engage the manager of the fund. However, I think, and we need to get clarification on that, if we had a trusteeship, a group of trustees, they may be the people that actually engage the fund manager, or if we opted not to have the trustees, we could have the treasurer, who is the custodian of the fund, be the trustee of the fund, and then we would direct the treasurer in a vote. That's my understanding. We need clarification on that.
Questions?
It's not easy.
Input?
Can I-
Budget and warrant, Kathy? Yep.
Yes. So I guess I'm a little confused. At the Budget and Warrant Committee meeting, we voted to recommend to the school committee to engage Prim to assist us in the process of establishing the OPEB trust fund for Neshoba Regional School District.
Right, Kathy, that's what I had said. I'm sorry.
Well, it just, I guess that I got confused by the discussion of the rest of the process. Even though we do have to adopt the statute, the concern was that we not wade into this without some support, and our vote was to engage Prim to assist us. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they become the management company we use. So I guess I wanted it to be clear that that was our vote and that was our recommendation. Is that what the school committee is going to vote on?
Your first thing is the recommendation that we engage Prim to help us establish the trust is correct. That's what we voted to recommend. The process is what I was describing, which is a sample resolution that we would need to adopt, and Prim would take us through that process
Right.
and make those decisions. So I'm sorry about any confusion on that.
Okay, no, I just,
Of particular note in that, Kathy, is the 3 different models of how we want the trust to be set. And we need to have, at some point in time, a discussion about that.
Sure.
Whether we have the retirement committee, which we don't have one to my knowledge, or create a trusteeship of specific trustees with specific criteria, or if we have the treasurer be the sole trustee of the fund. So those are some of the issues that we'll have to talk about, and they'll help direct us on.
Yep.
Do you need anything from the school? What do we need to do? There's several steps that you outlined.
I think we need to take a vote whether we want to engage Prim to start the process with us and help guide us along, like they had talked about how they could help guide us along the way. I'm not so sure how much that actually involves.
Is there a fee? There must be a fee attached to that, right?
It's possible they might say, you should talk to your counsel. So
That's
actually, it would
exactly
be useful to actually talk with them and find out to what extent they help people bootstrap themselves up.
So and I think they are going to say you need to talk
It could be,
to counsel.
yeah.
But my question is, if we engage with Prim, are we entering into a contract? There must be. I mean, this isn't just like pick up the phone, come have a meeting, and they're going to sit down and give us some freebie advice, right?
Perhaps looking forward to ultimately getting the management of the money in the OPEB, they would provide that service as we start the process.
They may, but
I think that's what we have to determine.
I think my question is, all right, we want to engage Prim, so just for everybody's understanding, what are we engaging them for
Mhm.
at this point in this step?
Mhm.
Is there a fee, and what are the terms of the relationship at this point?
Right, so what we're engaging them is to actually walk us through the process that I just described.
Yep.
Once that's done, we'll be able to, one way or another, vote to appoint somebody to manage.
So we're engaging them to walk us through the process.
It's kind of a chicken and the egg, and we're kind of looking to have the chick help us hatch the egg, if you know what I'm saying.
I got
It's a
that,
little-
but again, I'm gonna go back to what is the cost, because there's no way they're gonna walk us through this without some compensation that they would never stay in business. What is
So-
it, Steve? You got something to
I'm
add?
just talking to myself.
So
I don't think so,
personally-
but that's okay.
So personally, in my opinion, there's not a lot that Prim has to actually do. I think they just need to help clarify a couple of points with us, and they've provided us with the sample resolution. And then there's a simple checklist that we need to go through. Once we get those things established, once we decide one of those three entities that I had talked about
Yep.
that we want to create around as far as who the trustee or trustees will be, then we are set to set up the management company. And whether that's the trustees that do the voting, that's like something that Prim can answer. There's a few simple questions for clarification that we need to talk to Prim about.
All right, so.
But we can't go, and Prim may take us and say, we need to talk to council on this. But again, it may be a ping pong, and if we can engage, like if the administration can engage Prim, have a couple conversations about, here's what we want to do to set this up. Is this the right way? They may say yes, but you need to talk with council and get that done.
So, because I'm feeling like, I hear what you're saying, and you gave a good overview of what what the outline is of the activities, and I understand about the trustee, or does the treasurer who reports to the school committee maintain that role? And then there was a third option, but Pat, it feels like we need to understand what the rules of engagement are and the expectations as far as what does this chunk of work look like? How much does it cost? I think we need to bring that forward.
If there is. Well, so we need to, we can't. have-
Somebody needs to
Right,
engage
but
with
the
them.
well, that's the whole point. That's the recommendation that we're making, is that the school committee authorize the engagement of them. Otherwise, like, we can't, as B&W, we can't say, Pat, why don't you give Prim a call? And frankly, the reason that we're saying Prim is because in our general conversation, we didn't vote on it, but we had a conversation where there seems to be, and I'm not holding any member to it, but there seems to be general agreement that Prim is probably the best option that we have as far as managed services, the experience with the Mass State, et cetera, various reasons.
Right.
But that being said, that is the reason that we would look to talk with them, but we can't talk with them.
Right.
We can't tell administration to talk with them. We need to bring this forward to the school committee to direct
So
the
is
administration
it
to
an
talk.
initial discussion
Yes.
so it's a
Sure.
discovery discussion,
It's
as long as it doesn't
exactly.
involve money, because that's the only
No,
thing
no,
I'm
no.
trying to figure out.
There shouldn't be.
Okay.
It should be initial discussion.
Okay.
And there should be, so Pat would literally say, here's the step process,
What do we need to do?
here's the
Tell us-
resolution.
Yeah.
Is this what we need to do? Just follow ABC and then we're done and then we're good to go, or what? But we can't.
So we need
B&W
to
can't tell-
authorize
Exactly.
the administration to conduct an introductory discovery discussion with Prim to outline what the steps are that we need to take in order to begin this effort. Somebody move that one real quick.
So moved.
I think what we said was pretty much it. Engage Prim. We're not engaging them for the management. We're engaging them to.
For discovery.
Well, it wasn't even discovery, to assist us with the process, which that's essentially it. It's the same thing as discovery, whatever, but.
Yeah, because to me, discovery, because you know where I'm hung up, right? Is like Prim, come on and help us, and then we get into this, and it's like, oh, and oh, by the way, it's a 250. I just don't. My head's not absorbing it because we don't have the information
Right.
from them, right?
And that's what they should be providing. providing to us in this. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking
That would be my first
apples
question.
and, I mean,
What's it-
yeah.
First of all, does this cost me anything?
Right.
These are the things that we need some guidance on.
Right.
Is it going to cost us anything for you to give us that guidance?
And at what point does it
And-
start to cost?
Right,
Right.
right. Because we want it all together in one package.
For the
Right.
sake of discussion, I'll second Steve's motion so that we have something on the table.
Thank you.
And I have a question. I mean, is there a point where school committee is no longer involved in this? That it's just happening, like, and then they report every once in a while, or? how
Not
does-
necessarily.
Well, it
So the
depends on
decision has
the,
to be made?
That's the determination that needs to be made. So if there is a trusteeship that's put together with a group of trustees, so the trustees that we put together, and I already talked about that there have to be 5 to 13 individuals that are selected, and they have to have certain criteria that they meet. Somebody needs to be a financial specialist, somebody needs to be a retired representative from the government body, so
Are they paid positions?
that doesn't even say that. I'm sure
I
that.
don't. Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, we don't have a retired person from the school committee. The government organization is the school
Could be the
committee.
Neshoba Regional School District.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's the district or if it's the school committee. You're assuming it's the district, I'm saying
I am,
it's the
because
school committee.
it's the people that, it's their.
But they're not part of the
retirement
government
funds.
organization per
It's
se.
their
We
retirement.
are.
Right, but that's the kind of clarification that we would need, that they could, that Prim would be.
Right, so I mean,
clarified
from
with
my
us.
point of view, at this point, I would say the treasurer being the trustee is probably our best option of moving forward. I'm just saying, at this point, in my opinion, but I agree, we need to have some preliminary discussions with Prim. And even though I'm not on the budget warrant, my concept of Prim as the potential manager of the account would be the one that I would look at, number one. And number two, I just feel that, yes, the only part we're going to have after we set up the trust, and we have the trustee, and everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, is that what we budget every year to put into that fund. That will be our only connection, as far as I understand so far. That would be our only connection with OPEB. Everything else is
Managed.
right.
It's managed, but I'm not 100%, I don't know if I agree 100%. We need clarification on that, because I'm not sure who would select the management company. If there's a group of trustees, if they would select the management company, now that the trust is set up, or if the school committee would do that. And then number two, is it revised on an annual basis where you're reselecting, or through like we would do like with the auditors or so forth, every few years review this, and so I don't know if there's
That's
something
due diligence, yeah.
Right, but I don't know what that process is at that point. And I don't know if it would be the school committee that would do it, or if it depends on the makeup of those three factions that could be the trustees, trustee, or the governmental body, which doesn't exist, but, how they would play into this.
All right,
Okay?
so we
So it
have
gets
a,
confusing down the line, we just need a few
so we,
things.
so
So we're
pardon?
voting on a follow-up interview, basically.
Say it again.
We're
Pardon?
voting on a follow-up interview, basically, at this point. Like,
Yeah,
to
I think that's what
say,
it is.
this was interesting, thank you, we have some questions.
Right.
To help us
Unstated
understand.
in all of this is that we haven't yet conducted a formal evaluation of all three of these potential managers, and it's probably in our interest to actually put on a piece of paper or a table which indicates the pluses and minuses of each manager, and so that we feel comfortable with a decision in whoever that manager may be.
So in order to do that,
But
though,
we
don't
don't-
you
I
have
don't
to
think we
identify
don't.
what the criteria is for your table? That's important.
Some of them, but I'm just admitting that we have not done that, and probably people will be interested in doing that before a formal decision gets made, either by us or by the trust.
Right.
And we're not there yet for that particular decision, but
Right.
there's initial conversations which
Yeah.
are clearly necessary.
And so Mark's absolutely correct. We talked about that this morning in there, and it just is a simple idea. I mean, you know, you're gonna buy a new car and you're looking at 3 different models. You go to your website and it's gonna give you side-by-side comparisons of the key elements.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want to do and bring to
Yeah.
the school committee, but we need to determine what the important key elements
Right.
are. And so I think it was Kathy that brought that up this morning. Perhaps we talk to Dr. Hemmen, who might have some of those real key aspects that we should be looking for, that we can then make side-by-side comparisons with. I mean, there are certain ones that I think we could figure off the top of the head, like management fees and
Right.
performance and things like this. But then there are other things that we're not experts, and we need to talk to an expert, make sure that we're keeping an eye out for the right thing.
That's a good idea too, talking to Dr. Hammond.
So you're asking all of them back again?
No, I think that the administration could
No, I
have that
don't think they
conversation
need
with
that either.
with Dr. Hemmen, and just, he could give a list of what the important things are, and then they could put that, because we had talked to Pat, and Pat would be able to get a side-by-side analysis based on whatever data.
I'm sure they've done it before.
Oh, sure.
Right. So we would start with whatever he's got and then review that, right?
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Stephen? No, Mark.
Mark.
Thank you. We've had some really good
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were voting.
We are voting to authorize the administration. We have lots of questions, but I feel like we're starting to answer some of the initial questions. At least we have questions to ask, right? Which means that kind of indicates a level of understanding. So with that motion on the table, is there any other requests, comments, conversation? Because if not, we're gonna do the roll call discussion.
Essentially, we have 2
Vote.
parts, to be very clear. We have 2 parts. We need to establish the trust, which is what we're talking about when I described
Yeah,
these things here.
and
And then
determine
we
who
need to
the.
determine who's going to be the management
Right.
company of that trust.
Right, but.
Those are the 2
but-
things. There are,
But right now, what we're doing is, we're gonna ask Pat
Right.
to go and find out some information that will help us get closer to those 2.
correct.
Okay, I think we're good. Does everybody understand? Kathy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. So Neil, thank you for that. Steve, Mark, thank you. Elise, thank you. Good conversation, Kathy Lynn. So let's, without further ado, Elise
Yes.
and Steve
Yes.
and Lynn and Mark,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
and Lorraine. I'm a yes. So that's 7 passes unanimously. Okay, we're gonna try to move into the stabilization fund vote. Neil, this is you again.
So stabilization fund, we actually have 2 different votes that would take place for 2 different stabilization funds. The first one would be the turf field.
Is this in the packet? Anything in the packet?
There's anything in the packet. It's a revisitation from
There is nothing.
I don't believe we have formal text particularly describing the boundaries of each stabilization fund, but
Right.
I think in the most, not to take up his floor, in the most general way, the Budget and Warrant Committee recommended to the school committee it's desirable to have a stabilization fund for the field so that the future bond can be, the current bond can be paid off perhaps, or so that there's no necessity for a future bond. So it's circumscribed around the field as a facility item, and then separately having a stabilization fund for facilities, capital expenditures in general. For now, that means the high school
Right.
and possibly, I guess, vehicles.
Yes.
So,
In addition, though, just to be clear, so following the process that we're trying to do this year, we're bringing that recommendation forward to establish the funds. Then we would ask that you would charge B&W to go back and put in place the parameters, proposed parameters of those particular trusts. And then come back to you and say, you know, here is the defined elements of this particular trust. And then have this-
Stabilization fund.
Stabilization fund. And then we'd have you revote on this again, and then that would, so it's 2 pieces basically. We're creating the stabilization fund, but then you're coming back and charging us with creating some guidelines that we can come back to you guys for approval with conversation.
Why wouldn't you
whatever.
not do it all at the same time? Why would you not bring forward the stabilization fund request for a vote with all the information we need to make a single vote? So that I could very easily say, you guys go off and figure out how the stabilization fund is gonna work.
Right.
Bring the package to us with your recommendations,
Right.
and then explain it to us, and then we make the vote
So-
at once.
So, right, we could totally do that. My thinking on this was that we take the vote, we can actually have that discussion about the funds. We can actually take the information from the discussion we have now, go back and use that to put together something that's going to be more meaningful to the school committee as a whole, rather than us coming up with our ideas and then everybody trying to tweak everything in that final vote, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm trying to take things that would be, like, Lynn has a couple questions, I know, from so she's gonna have questions, so if we're going back and creating parameters, we're taking into consideration some of the questions or concerns that Lynn had, or you have, or anybody else had.
Why can't we have a discussion about it?
Right.
Well, it eliminates part of that process, but,
No, because you're making the recommendation. So if you bring the recommendation forward and Lynn's got some, or anyone's got some adjustments they want to make, then there's no need to I wouldn't take a vote until the thing is cooked.
okay, then let's.
I think
pull
you
it
guys
and
just
back.
go do the work, right? No?
It'd be useful to
Pat?
hear the sense of the committee. If anyone's against it, we want to hear about it.
Well, that's the point.
For
That's,
what?
that's where I'm coming
Well, I
from.
don't think that we
If we're gonna put the effort into it, we want to know that there's at least, there's at least, like, the will that people want, like, in other words, so,
So what, okay, so let me pulse.
yep,
How do you guys feel about a stabilization fund for the athletic field?
I think it's a good idea, but there's plenty of money. There's $242,000 in just fees. I mean, why aren't they just using that money for the field? I mean, that was supposed to be self-sustaining. So my question would be, where is this money coming from? Is it coming from the budget? Or is this, the fees from, the ticket sales?
Which is, so see what Lynn is getting to is like that was my question, is how is this being funded? How, is there seed money that you start with? I mean, is it every year you put money? You know what, I really think, I don't know if I'm messing something up here or not, but I say, go figure it out. You guys are the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee. We are saying we don't know where to start.
but even this little information exchange back and forth is helpful to define things for us. Because honestly,
So what
we
other
may not have
questions?
even talked about where is the money gonna come from to start the fund. We're just talking about the fund itself. So, do you know what I mean? It's like start the fund and then figure out down the line, where's that gonna come from? But,
So in the most general ways, you could set up the fund and not fund it for 5 years.
that's right.
Or the stabilization fund. But we do have the candidate revolving fund, which perhaps some large amount could go initially into the stabilization fund for the field because it's there.
There's enough money there now to replace the turf.
But if it's
Possibly.
not,
Well,
if
this
it's
is
not in.
It's 242,000.
No, this is as of 6/30/17. This money, some of this was committed to this budget this year.
Okay.
So part of the reason why you might want a stabilization fund is so that 1 year you don't end up using up the whole fund for
Right.
Immediately,
and then
Right,
you don't
that's
have a future pot of money for when you actually need to replace the
But I
field.
wouldn't want it coming out of the general budget because that field should be taking care of itself.
Right, but that's the, right, I totally,
So in
that's the
general,
criteria.
and also in general, your stabilization fund needs to be funded through an authorization of the school committee, and that's usually in the general budget annually. So we
right
might
up-
be putting some number of dollars, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 a year towards perhaps each of these
Whatever.
funds, so that you are building up a fund for later use, whatever
I would
that
like to
use
see
was
a day
designated.
where you don't come back and say, we need to buy pellets, or we need to buy a machine, or we need to buy a part.
That's what the
purpose.
point of
There's
putting.
lots of money in there for that.
No, but that's the purpose, Lynn. So right now, everybody, if anything can be taken out of that fund and reallocated anywhere within the budget. And by setting up the stabilization fund, you cannot do anything except for use it for the field.
Yeah,
So
but-
it creates.
And that's great, that's great.
that
But I
safety.
don't want the money from the budget to go into that fund. It should be,
But that's how the.
Well, that's how it works. That's how we
the-
get money for anything. So what you would do is you
So all of
designate.
that- So that 242,000 that's in that right now, whether it's used or not for the budget, was just kind of shifted. I mean, I don't understand why ticket sales would go into the general fund. I mean, it's a revolving.
It doesn't,
fund,
it
ticket
goes
sales.
into a revolving fund.
So it's the revolving fund, but you just said that you took some of that money and you put it into the
No,
budget.
you said 242,000.
That's just ticket sales.
That's not just on two. That's
No,
not just ticket
that
sales.
funded some of the budget.
I didn't think you could do that.
So we, through our budgetary process, decided to withdraw some money from that revolving fund in order to fund some of the athletic
Right.
activities. And so a future school committee could one year say, we want all $200,000, and so that the pot of money that's there would not be available for some future
But
activity.
if you were going to come forward with something, I would like to see that you're going to take, that much money, or you're going to vote every year to an amount of money out of those ticket sales and put it into, and it's not coming in the budget.
We could
But
we could make that a policy, but we can't control the future
Right.
of the school committee.
Right. I think Steve wants to make a comment then.
And I want to make a comment because at the last meeting, we have in our minutes part of this discussion. And let's see, Ms. Maroney advised a stabilization fund is funded through the budget process and can only be used for the purpose the fund was established. Mr. Darcy advised that this would have to go on town warrant to create the stabilization funds. Mr. Darcy advised as chair of the Budget and Warrant Committee that he would strongly suggest that this be put on the agenda for tonight for a vote, so that it could be sent to the towns to be included in their warrants.
All right, so that's good, but
What's my point?
yes.
My point is that if we delay at least the concept of creating these stabilization funds, we're running up to the border of the town meetings.
I don't think that there's any,
And we're not, and the stabilization funds being different than a revolving fund is funded through the budget.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like OPEB to a certain extent. It's funded through the budget.
Yeah.
It gets put aside. It's kind of like when some of us were younger and we had limited incomes, we would have an envelope with food and an envelope for rent and an envelope for this or that, and each week when you got your pay, you put a couple of bucks in here and a couple of bucks in there and a couple of bucks in there, so that at the end of the month when you had to pay your rent, all the money was in your envelope. And that's kind of, that's my understanding of how the stabilization fund works. And that's what
right, so I think there's a lot of talk, and I'm not sure where it's going. I have one, go ahead, Elise. I think we just need to,
Especially because Steve reminded me, because, I was remote and I had the flu last meeting, so I've forgotten that. Thank you for the reminder, because I think it is important if we want to establish these to get it before the towns in time for
Right.
these meetings, because we can establish them and not put any money in them
Right.
for the next 5 years, it sounds like, or forever.
10 years or forever, right.
But I think it's important from a financial perspective for us to set up these kinds of accounts and say, we're gonna at least signal our intention to set aside money specifically for this, so that we're saving for a rainy day, we're ready for our rent, like Steve said, rather than getting hit by something.
I don't think I've heard around the table anyone saying they don't want to set up stabilization funds. So let's establish that we all agree, because I've heard, yeah. So we want to establish stabilization funds. Is the request that we just want to vote to set up the fund, and then what? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is what is the ask?
It has to go on the town warrant, right, in order to set it
Before
up.
it's actually.
All three of the towns need to agree to this in the town meeting.
Right.
If you don't have parameters around it, all you're doing is increasing the budget.
No, it's not really, Lynn, because what Steve just said, it's, I think a lot has to happen before we get to that point, but all this is saying is, here's this bucket of money right here, we're gonna put $10,000 into this bucket of money every year, and that's gonna help pay for, don't use the athletic field, what was the other one? Facilities, because we know that the high school has got issues that it needs over and above that, and And 5 years down the line, Florence Sawyer School is gonna be really old, and it's gonna need stuff, and whatever else it is. So every year, $5,000 is gonna go, let me finish. $5,000 is gonna come from the general budget, and it's gonna go into this facility's, revolving, whatever the heck it's called. Stabilization fund. And then we probably won't use much of it, and then over 5 years, like $25,000, oh my gosh, we need to replace the doors in the Sawyer School. We can take it out of that fund, and then we're good. So that's what the point of it is, right?
And it's a wonderful idea, except for now you have to change the district agreement, because the district agreement is anything over $10,000, it comes out of the tax.
So
it's.
so then forget using Sawyer School, use the high school, because we own it.
Didn't use the high school, okay?
Right.
So now I'm back to, okay, so what's the E&D fund for then? What's it?
I think
what's
the
the
point was
for?
less
What is
money
that
in the
for?
E&D fund, right?
Right, and for
Yeah, but
controlling
that
wild fluctuations, because when we get this turf field
It's a good
done, I mean,
conversation.
we are
We need
looking
to
well
have
into
this.
6 figures to have that turf field done.
Again, there's so much money in the facility, for the turf field. There's a lot of money there. I don't know why.
That
they
money's
couldn't
not
get
just
that for it.
sitting there, though. That money is actually, that's part of the actual existing budget, and,
There's $242,000
no, there's not.
in the fourth quarter, according to this thing.
And it's not there, so we need to get like an update on how much is actually in there at this point, but there's not $242,000.
There are expenditures against that money in this fiscal year 18 budget.
For sports, but I just don't understand why. I would rather see parameters and how this thing is going to get funded, so that it doesn't look like we're just building another pot to draw from, and we're still going to go back to the towns for anything over $10,000. Because we still don't know what the parameters are for the high school, do we? When it gets to a certain point, we're obligated to go to the town and say, okay, this needs to get fixed.
So
And
for
it goes across all
example,
three towns.
Isn't the law, and I could be wrong about this, but isn't the law that, can you guys clarify, for a stabilization fund, part of the point is that you then do not have to go to the town for a
Right.
big expense, because you've set aside that money, and you've got $200,000 or whatever in that stabilization fund for your big, oh my God, the boiler exploded. I hope that never happens. Thank goodness we have this set aside, and we don't have to ask the towns.
Ooh, that's gonna get scary though.
so
Because the
imagine
towns
if,
own the buildings.
Right.
We lease them, we're renters.
Yeah, and that was
This is for the high school,
my
this
question
isn't
about how the
for-
law
But it would only
works,
be the high
because
school.
the way that the law is set up for stabilization
Stabilization
funds
just for high school.
is it's
That's
for
what
that
I'm
purpose.
It's
So
not-
how does it work with the
it's not-
district?
Yes, it would.
Okay,
so
stop.
imagine 10 years ago, we had set up a stabilization fund and we put $50,000 a year for the high school for facilities. In the current coming budget year, we would love to have $300,000 available so that for the septic facility capital expense we need, we can simply draw down the accumulated funds there. It would be not a difficult budgetary thing, but because we slowly accumulated funds, we would be able to handle this, and we would not need to, for example, potentially or hypothetically go to the towns for a bumped up budget in order to handle this capital expense, or
Yep.
possibly alternatively to go to the towns for a bond. So that's the rationale for having a fund like that.
And that's great, so that's a great example, because now, if you had had the $50,000, so last summer, you could have gone, you could have replaced the pump, the fire pump, and you wouldn't have had to go and ask for, or we wouldn't have to look for the additional money. So now you gotta put parameters in as to, okay, so when do you go to the towns and when don't you, or do you never go to the towns now?
Well, I want to just get something out there. Right now, the regional agreement says anything over $10,000 the town has to handle unless it's the high school, and then
Is that
we
the
own it.
So we
So
own it.
that wouldn't change, because if something went wacky in one of the schools and it was like $75,000, that's a building that's owned by the town that still the town covers.
This would be high school based, because you're having
Right.
all 3 towns are contributing to the budget. This is not something that
Right.
Lancaster's contributing to Bolton's problem.
So-
And so that, it isn't done in the agreement that way, it wouldn't be done, and you could easily put the parameters in place just to specify that this is a high school facilities stabilization fund, right? So, something that simple can be put in place to do that. And again, Mark's example is a perfect example, and it stabilizes the tax burden, because we're not coming and saying, hey, we gotta whack you for 10% this year because we have these things that we have to spend. We can't say no, we have
So-
to spend.
But
Can-
just,
Go ahead.
just back in what we did, okay, so, you guys weren't here for this, but we're gonna go back to the field. The field came up,
Right.
and the mistake that had happened in construction back in 2000 was coming to the end, it was paid for. And they went out and they went to the towns for the $4.4 million, which was reduced to 2.2. All right, so you're saying that at that point, the school could at that point say, well, we're gonna do something out in the fields, and they would attach that, or is this for emergencies and deficiencies? You know, what is the stabilization for? Can they use that towards the fields? Could they?
I
Could they have done any project like that?
I think the word stabilize is really in reference to the budget, right? It's so that your budget doesn't do this when you have
Okay.
some big event. And because all of the towns own their buildings except the high school, I think it is a good idea to, given the condition of the high school.
So do we want to put some parameters on that before we go before?
Well, that's what that's what I'm saying. There's too many questions. I'm not comfortable voting on anything tonight. If you guys, somebody wants to put a motion forward, there's nothing to vote on tonight until budget warrant says, holy crap, we're not really sure. Could have been worse. We're not really, I know you're not happy with me right now, but we're not really sure where this is going. But I would say budget warrant, you guys decide what the recommendation is for what this should be, how it should be set up, and you bring it to us because that's what you do.
So you want us to establish the parameters of the individual funds in more detail than?
Well, what is it? Yeah, what is it? What is it used for? How would it be funded? Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate in here.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Because if you have a stabilization fund and you've created the parameters, you need to be very careful how you do that because you could wind up having something that needs to be done that you can't apply the stabilization fund to, and you still have to go to the town to get done. So pigeonholing yourself in a certain way is not a good thing. The stabilization fund, to your point, is to absolutely stabilize things so that you don't have wild fluctuations of E&D, especially if E&D is drawn down a bit. We're forward-looking, seeing that there are a lot of revenue sources which are going to be dropping off.
Right.
We can't afford to have these huge swings with E&D.
Right.
And so having that stabilization fund in there does allow for the stabilization of the districts on those specific, usually capital, it has to be capital, items.
And the school committee needs to vote, so, I mean.
That's right.
And I was under the impression that these were only for the high school, right? They're both only for the high school. So if
Yes.
it's, the way that it works, I Googled it a lot. I wanted to understand after the last meeting to fully understand. So the way, I'm just clarifying, the way that it works is that, you have this pot of money, with the example of the high school, we would not necessarily have to go back to the town, but the entire school committee would have to vote. You can't just have somebody that says, we've got $250,000.
Right. That's actually really key.
I think we should have something
A
really
party.
awesome. Yeah, some really awesome thing on our football field. Done. The entire school committee has to vote before any of that.
No,
That's
school
how it works,
committee
right?
Because it's an appropriation
They
from the
allocate
budget.
the funds, they put it in there. So say
Okay.
there's 100,000 in there, they may decide not going to put any in there because that's enough.
So I'm going to go back to,
That's up
Neil,
to you.
what is it that you want
A vote for the,
to establish?
right, I honestly don't think that we need to have more parameters put in place other than we have a high school turf field stabilization fund. Turf field stabilization fund.
You,
And you have a high school facilities stabilization fund.
I get that, but even so, I have to look 2 and 3 steps ahead, or it doesn't
Sure.
make sense to me.
Yep.
So we vote to establish this stabilization fund, and we go to our towns at town meeting and say, put this on the warrant, please. This is what we would like to do. We'd like to set up these stabilization funds so that we can better plan for and react to large expenditures in this area and this area, right? I'm just trying to lay this out for everybody. And so when you put that on the warrant and then the FinComs and the advisories say, oh, what are you gonna do with them? How are you gonna, where are the deep, do you know where I'm going?
I think I know where you're going, but I think the FinComs understand the concept of the stabilization fund. It's basically to smooth out
Right.
the budgetary process over a number of years. And what we're doing is we're putting money in that extra envelope so that if, God forbid, something happens to the high school, that we need to repair like a $300,000.
All right, but stop for a second, because I'm gonna lose the thought. So where I was going with this was, so where I was going
That's
with,
me with a senior moment.
You want to be able to respond to critique.
exactly, I
Right.
wanna be able to respond to what are you doing with it, when, and who's making the decisions. So if there are general rules and laws around stabilization funds, this is what it is, you can't do anything other than this, okay, fine. And if it's just set up I mean, I need some input here.
So actually, to respond to a little bit of that, the school committee can only transfer out through a 2/3 vote, which is the same as
Budget.
the budget. But because it was put in through the standard budget process, it can be done on a non-budget cycle. So for example, when the gym roof collapses, you can actually, through 2/3 vote, decide, okay, we're going to draw down the stabilization fund for this
Sure.
unusual and unexpected purpose.
So the question is, do we need to take a vote on this?
I don't think we need to take a vote on it tonight. It could be we don't even need to bring it to this town meetings this spring because we want to feel more solid about the whole concept. And I feel like just having this conversation was a great start, and it showed where we need to be able to answer critiques. So I'm not feeling urgent that we get it to the spring town meetings. It might be, it's desirable, but maybe it's not the choice that we need to make. But I think within the next 6 months, we should bring a similar proposition, in my opinion, to the town meetings and ask, really have that debate at each town.
What is the deadline for the warrants?
In Stowe, I believe it's March 30. I don't know the other
so
two
we're on the
towns.
same time for Bolton.
And so I don't think we need to vote tonight, but I personally would like to see it go on the warrants for the towns for this spring, because we're putting it off another year. The high school itself has, the field has a finite life to it. The longer that we hold off on this, the more money we gotta throw into that every time, and the less actually useful the stabilization fund becomes. The same thing with the high school facility stabilization fund. By having that, one thing that we're missing out, if we're going to do anything to that high school, whether it's build a new high school or do renovations, there is going to be a period of time in between A and B. And there are going to be items that will come
Yeah.
up that have to be taken care of. We're going to be looking at bonding out things, we're going to be looking at substantial amounts of money, and to have something come up which throws everything out of whack and us not prepared for it, it really can put the district in a tizzy. So by having that stabilization fund for that purpose, and if you, again, if you pigeonhole it too much, thank you, Elise, for bringing that up, because by having the school committee make that vote, if you got FinCom that are upset about something, bring that forward, that's going to be on the agenda. It should be, I think, out of courtesy discussed, and I think there's been good communication with the administration and the town managers, and I think that gets thoughtfully brought forward, but it allows us to make these changes without having to have, let's say, a special town meeting and bring people together in order to make this done.
Eventually.
Eventually. And again, E&D is going to be dropping down lower and lower and lower, so it's become more and more of a challenge to address big hits. And especially when we're looking at a big nut like the high school and the issues that we're looking to tackle. So that's the mentality behind all
I
this.
don't think
And-
there's any question as to whether or not we need it. I mean, like I said before, I think everybody's in agreement that we need it. I'm trying to figure out what is it that you need us, what are you asking us to do, and what do you want us to do as budget and warrant? That's what I'm trying to get at.
So I'm happy to have us bring this back to budget and warrant and come back with a thoughtful approach, once again, with you guys as to specifically, but I really think that putting parameters beyond what it is. It's a high school facility stabilization fund. If we say it's only for the heating system and suddenly the gym roof collapses, it doesn't cover that.
I think that's fine, that makes sense.
But do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if we pigeonhole that too much, the same thing, if it's called the turf field stabilization fund, you can't take it out and decide you're gonna build a garden shed somewhere.
So what we've established after all this discussion is that we need a high school stabilization fund.
Actually, I'd like to just, having heard this discussion tonight, there may be reason for us to agree to a district stabilization fund in the sense we have IT equipment that can be expensive. It's not located there. That is property of the high school. That there could be an occasion where we need to use, or it's desirable to use, a stabilization fund for something like that. Maybe you have an IT disaster for some reason. I don't know. But I'm speculating that a just district property stabilization fund is worth debating and worth thinking about. And I think this is why we're having this conversation, because we admit at the Budget and Warrant Committee that it's not a fully formed thing, and we want to hear critique from everybody. And having a chance to have this conversation
Yep.
made that clearer for me just now.
I agree. And that's 100%. That's
Yeah.
the feedback that we want to come back. And if we come back with just our thoughts and ideas, we're still having this conversation right now, except we wasted a little more time in Budget and Warrant.
I think this conversation's been pretty robust.
It has,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that, to Mark's point. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. If we just stopped it, didn't talk about this, and just sent this back to us, and we got the feedback we're looking for in many cases, I still feel strongly about the parameters. I think that's a really interesting idea that Mark just brought up.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about, and I think that's definitely has merit. But the point being, I think if we pigeonhole things to very specific.
I don't know why
I
you
think
keep
that-
saying that. I don't know.
Well, that's
Who's
the
telling
impression.
you?
That's the impression I'm getting that some of the members want. And
Oh, you mean Lynn? I mean, just call it what it is. No,
I didn't say that.
Lynn.
Did I say it?
You didn't, but yeah, you meant, well,
Right.
Body language is great. But no, I wasn't specific that.
I need to know where the money's coming from, and
Right.
it's tough. And it also, what you're gonna come across is, it sounds like another END, and that's a tough.
It's like a savings account.
Yeah, and all it's doing is increasing the budget. That's what it sounds like. And you always talk about optics. It's like, okay, so call it what it is. It doesn't have to be for the roof. It doesn't have to be for IT. It doesn't have to be anything like that. I understand it's for the high school, but I don't want it to be another END for the high school.
Right, but then it's really up to the individual school committee to decide where that money comes from. So let's say it's gate receipts. Let's say we've got $50,000 that we took in gate receipts, and we say, hey, we're gonna take it from that. But all we're doing is we're kidding ourselves, because $50,000 worth of gate receipts still goes into a pool that it could come out from anywhere, and it's still that money, right?
As long
But
as
if we
it fits
wanna,
the budget.
if we wanna have, right, but that's something for the school committees to figure out, and the towns are gonna come down on the school committees if that's the way that turns into. So it's, anything can be abused and
You
used the
know,
wrong
one of the
way.
things that and we gotta wrap this conversation up, because we need to, and then we
Sure.
need to decide where do we go from here. But one of the reasons why I'm all in on this, and I would pretty much go with whatever the recommendation is from Budget and Warrant, is it gets us away from what happened to this district. It gets us away from hidden pockets of money, like little things that we didn't even know what the name of it was. We didn't even know where the money was coming from. It was like, do you remember there were like, through the audit, there was like money that was kind of like pushed into accounts that shouldn't have been there, that wasn't identified. And I think that this allows us to say, this is our vacation fund for the high school, or this is our vacation fund for the district. I'm using that loosely, right? It's like a little savings account. It's like a Christmas account, right? You're putting money in every month, and then at Christmas time, you get to use the money. So that's how I see this, we're identifying exactly what it is. We're identifying what it could be used for, and yes, there is money from the general budget that's going to fund it every year, and we decide how much that's going to be, and then we move forward.
And in addition, this isn't just like a random general account that we're putting together. So it is literally
It's identified.
an identified specific use. And that's really the key, and it still needs to be voted on by the school committee. So, I mean, that's the key part to all of this. It's not just like a second E&D fund or something like that. And the whole purpose of to Lorraine's point, we're reducing the E&D, and there's these wild fluctuations. You get more stabilization across the entire budget, across the entire district.
We're not going to be, Lynn, with the
That's it.
E&D and the way it's going right now, we're not going to be able to respond. As the years go on and we wean ourselves off that hamster wheel, we're not going to be able to respond to big issues. So these stabilization funds, I think, are going to become even more important because it identifies, instead of this big, huge, 5% E&D, 2.5%?
I forget what it is.
2.5%? I think municipals are 5%.
5% is the max.
5%. So instead of let's put 5% of our budget to whatever, $2.5 million in an account. And then as we wean ourselves off of it, if something happens, it's like, where does that money come from? We'd have to go back to all 3 towns and say, we need more money. But if we set up a couple of these stabilization funds with areas we know are problematic, like the high school, right? Then we're slowly saving this money that's not going to impact the E&D fund because we know that building is not in a good place. And even if we did enter the MSBA process, and even if we did get accepted, you built schools, right? It's going to take us up to 5, 6, 7 years. What's going to happen with a building that's already in deficit? That's why I think this is a no-brainer.
And again, I'm not saying no to the stabilization fund. I have a problem with no parameters. You came in and said, let's have one. But it just, on the surface, looks like another E&D fund. All right, and I get what you're saying. I get it for the high school. I get stabilization. But on the flip side, like what you're saying is, whatever you start it with, once you establish it, so suppose you start with $50,000 and all of a sudden we need 300. All right, you go back to the towns because we didn't explain it correctly and how we're going to build it up. And now we're saying we need 250.
Well, you can't, emergencies happen and crises happen that we can't plan for.
And I get that.
But let me tell you just one more thing, and then I'll shut up and we'll get the heck out of this conversation. But let's say it's $300,000 and we've only put $50,000 in from last year. We're going to the towns asking them to split 250 instead of 300. So even right there, I know it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but you're being thoughtful and planful, and you're preparing for potential crises with this.
We knew this was going to happen. We've got 50,000 saved. This is the best we were able to do in the period of time.
Right?
You've been proactive.
But if you haven't described it and you just put out there as a stabilization fund, this is the reason for it.
It's not a stabilization fund. It's specific. It's a high school facility stabilization fund. At this point, possibly a district stabilization fund, which is admittedly.
So why don't you guys go back to B&W and decide what this should be and what it should be for? You don't have to pigeonhole yourselves. That's not what we're asking for, but I think just some ideas, and it doesn't have to be, it's definite this is what it's gonna be, but it, like we're recommending, how much money would you recommend to put in it? What is it for? Is it for just the high school? Is it for the district? And would you recommend, okay, put $50,000 in it this year and then increase it by 10,000 over 5 years till you get to 100,000? I don't know what it is, but.
So let's see if we can nail this down a little bit. Does anyone have any objection to the high school turf field stabilization fund, just by name alone? Is there more detail or anything that you guys are?
Probably want less because you'd be buying pellets too.
I don't know, why would you,
It's not turf.
What's the point? We're getting down into so many.
No, because the reason I'm asking that is because if everybody's happy with the turf, the idea of the turf field stabilization fund, we'll be discussing the district or high school facilities fund and coming back to you with that. We don't really have to have that conversation on the turf field part. So I'm just trying to get a feel, if everybody's comfortable with that part, we can push forward, we can make a recommendation for the amount because we know we have an idea how much it will cost to replace that, along with, Tanya has a schedule for pellets.
Yeah.
Tanya has a schedule for the turf itself to be replaced.
Yeah.
So, and we may even want to call it the turf field / track stabilization, just so it covers that, but.
That's granular. I thought you didn't want to be granular.
No, because the track needs to be resurfaced.
It does. Yeah,
Steve would like to say something. And Kathy, I wonder.
Kathy, do you have
Kathy
anything to say?
fell asleep. Go ahead, Steve, I'm good with that, go
Two
ahead.
things. First of all, the concept of the stabilization fund is like an E&D fund without the D piece, but it's dedicated, okay? In other words, it's a dedicated E fund, if you want to look at it that way.
So I
That's
think
one
we
way of looking at
surpassed
it.
that. So where are you going with this?
Where I'm going with this is that I would like to make a recommendation that we adopt the concept of a athletic field, whatever it is, turf field, stabilization fund, and present that to the towns at the town meetings and the warrants. And since our budget will be decided before the approval of the stabilization funds, there will be no money put into the stabilization funds this
Right.
fiscal cycle.
That's right.
Okay, it will have to be starting with the next fiscal cycle. So that's my motion is that we create, or that we recommend the creation of a stabilization fund for the turf field.
So why don't you guys, B&W, go off, do your thing, unless you want to do this right now, you feel that you need, I don't know that we need to come back to the next meeting, we've just added one, probably 2 meetings. Bring it back and tell us what it's for, and let's move it forward.
And I withdraw my motion.
And if you
Oh.
call it an athletic campus, and that way, because you might
Thank
have to
you.
resurface the tennis courts.
That's fair enough.
Athletic
It's-
campus,
yeah.
interesting, okay.
And that way you're covered, because the
Look
baseball.
at you.
Broad, now it's broader.
Thank you, thank you for
Now it's
coming
broader.
along.
No, I never said I didn't agree with it. I don't agree with just calling it the stabilization fund and walking away.
We're not,
Okay, so you guys know what you're doing, we're
It's a
moving on, and
XYZ
it's time to go.
stabilization.
Okay, for those of you who are still with us and awake, Kathy, are you there?
Of course I'm here.
She's a good woman. Okay,
Where might we go?
all right, we can't hear you, so I'm gonna keep moving and just scream if you need something, but
Yep.
not really. Okay, I'm afraid to ask, but subcommittee reports, budget and warrant.
Forget that.
We had just a generally good meeting.
Good.
I think we brought most of the things forward. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, no, we pretty much brought everything forward already at this point in time, other than, so we do have, that we discussed, and actually this is really key. So there is a copy of it in the materials for this meeting that not sure if is it there yet, Alita? So it's not there, but it'll be there tomorrow. What was requested, and this is Mark's brainchild, and it's a good idea. We get a warrant, right, that we receive, and that warrant has always been very difficult to translate, because you get basically a bunch of numbers, and then you have to, at one point in time, we weren't provided the cost centers for those numbers, so it was like, it was impossible to translate, and it may have it'll have a note next to a $10,000 check, and it may say Joe Jones, and you have no idea what this was, so you have to have a query that gets put together, goes to administration, and then Pat or whoever else would look this up and then get back to the superintendent, would then get back to it. Right? So every month there's a report that's put out for each one of the principals in the schools, and that is basically a report that details pretty much what's on the warrant, except for some of the district specific expenses. And it is specific to the line item. It tells you exactly what it is. It's got the reference number next to it if you want to look at the cost center, if that's really how you want to go. But it creates a good majority of the items that are on the warrant. It actually it makes sense. So you can look at it, and in 10 or 15 minutes time, you can actually peruse through the entire thing and understand what's going on, rather than it would take you literally hours to go through that warrant that we have there right now. So this is a great way of being able to take what's already generated, so it's not creating any more work for the administration, and bringing a huge amount of transparency to the school committee, because the school committee is responsible for that warrant, and we don't want to be signing things that we're not understanding to a decent extent. So I invite us to take a look at maybe these particular reports, and maybe next school committee meeting or within the next couple, and just take a look at it and see what you all think for yourselves. But I think it's a fantastic idea that we adopt and we take a look, just have available for people who want to get that detail on a quick basis.
So I think we should have the conversation, because I'd like to hear what the administration thinks, and I get the issue with the warrant. It is hard to understand what some of those line items are, but the school-based reports, but then why would you just be looking at the school-based reports? Now do you know what I'm saying? Now you're looking at the district. Then outside of the school, there's other, I'm not really doing this well. Outside of the individual schools, there are administrative functional areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now are we asking Pat to send us, so I would say, put it on the agenda.
Right, so this is just it's a low-hanging fruit option for understanding the vast amount of the warrant, without any real extra effort on the administration's end, and it does nothing but helps the school committee and gives great transparency as far as the process of it.
So maybe, Alita, maybe for 221, can we put we'll talk with Brooke about it, a warrant report discussion? Because I'd like to hear what, what does the report look like? What's Pat think? What's Brooke think? What do you guys think?
Brooke may think this is the worst idea since non-sliced bread.
All right.
And I think it's fair to say that it's still an idea who's being shaped, and it's not yet well formed. So there's further discussion to be had at both the subcommittee level and at the school committee level.
So when is your next budget and warrant meeting?
I don't know if Kathy's available next week, which we can take offline. Then Mark and Kathy will meet next week during the vacation. If not, then it will be the following week.
I'm not available next week.
Okay, so it would be the 28th.
Okay, it can't be the 28th because we absolutely don't have any room.
You guys are still working.
Well, that would be budget warrant that would be.
All right, so then you would bring it forward on 3/7.
I'm not sure if we're in
For
a
discussion?
rush. We're in a rush for this. It can wait till after the budget season.
Oh!
Yeah, it doesn't affect anything, right?
No.
It's just
Nope.
it's a convenience.
Nope, it's low-hanging fruit for understanding that big, thick thing of documents that we have.
But I'm anal, so can we put it on an April meeting?
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
No. It's great, and
All right, we're
I'm
moving
just
on.
reporting out on what we did today. I'm not making a
Anything
suggestion
else?
for.
Yeah, no, but
that's it.
it's a good thing to put on the agenda.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Budget warrant, you did a ton of work, and I'm really thrilled, and I think we all probably should thank you very heartily, because it's a lot of stuff we've been asking for and talking about for a long time. So, awesome stuff. Personnel, there's no report. Policy, I know you met. Who's reporting out? Elise?
Report out.
Pardon? Okay.
We met today. And finished the review of Section K, and also had a chance, Budget and Warrant joined us from 5 to 6. So that we could have a chance to kind of look back at some of the previous chunks of sections that we've looked at and how they connect up with some of their policy recommendations based on the audit.
So what are your next steps on that?
Our next steps are we have another section we have to get to that we didn't get to today, Section L, because of splitting up the meeting.
Oh, good. So you're still moving forward
So we're
with
still
it.
moving forward on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just need to check in with Susan and obviously and see kind of when we'll meet with Dorothy again to do the next review. In terms of budget and warrant, they have a printout of all of the relevant sections from the different pieces of sections. And they're going to sort of cross-check it. We did that together as a group, but they're going to go back and cross-check against the things they were looking for and make sure that all the policies that we have, some of which are new from MASC, match up with the recommendations. And then if there's anything left that they feel like isn't addressed by those policies, then we'll go back at that point and try to find
So So you guys are doing some crazy work too.
Yes, and we had a few questions that Dorothy is going back to check on in terms of, you know, can we add, is there a policy that already does X and where is it and or what can we add to it? But
Cool, thank you. I think, oh, CPAC, do you have anything?
no,
Okay. And then correspondence, anything of note? I think we all pretty much see the same. Consent agenda, we're assuming that the meetings of January 31st, 2018 and the warrants of February 16th, 2018 are good to go. Our items for next agenda, now I gotta really think this through, Alita. I'm gonna have to go through the calendar because we have the school year calendar. Oh, Anne Marie's shaking her head, yes? Could you do it next week? Oh, awesome. So we'll do that, we'll move that to next week. Brooke's gonna be doing the SOI, she's gonna be bringing that forward at the end of the month, I think. The Melanson Heath check-in on the forensic audit, I've asked for that, and Pat's bringing them in at the end of the month on the 28th. And the employee insurance review is on the 28th, which is also our public hearing, so, and the leach field follow-up. So if there's any way for some of those items from the administration to move to the 21st or the 7th, and I really don't want to move, you know what, next week we're going to do, if you could let Brooke know, next week will be the discussion on the digital learning. We really need to tackle that, and that's going to be a big, long chat. So maybe we're okay for the 21st.
So you'll have to get in touch with her to do the agenda because she's out of town until Monday night.
She's out of town until Monday night? Oh. Well, if you talk to her, let her know we need to.
So someone will have, because the agenda will have to be posted Friday because of the holiday Monday.
What's the emails?
It's President's Day Monday.
She did emails.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
So someone will
So-
have to create an agenda Friday.
Yeah. Because now we're crunching on time. And we're just gonna have to do it. All right, thank you for that.
Somewhere, we've got like basically 3 meetings, I think, maybe a 4th if there's a second one.
Right.
Between now and when that warrant, anything that was going to a warrant would have to be on there. So if we're going to have that discussion on the stabilization funds on one of those agendas, we want to probably
You want to do it
revisit.
on the 20, can you do it next week? You won't be able to meet.
I won't be here.
So it would have to be on the 7th. Well, I think you all need to be here for that. So it would have to be on the 7th. You'd have to be prepared to go on the 7th for the stabilization fund.
I think we could, as far as answering some of the questions you had. I mean, at least further the discussion with a possible vote.
And we can ask Brooke to let the town administrators know that this is coming, because she meets with them regularly,
Mhm.
so she can give them the heads up. And that way, we're letting, because they're the ones that put the warrants together for the town meeting, so that's a good point. Does that work? That works. So next week, we're gonna do, well, we gotta get in touch with Brooke, but okay, I'll take care of that.
Will we
afterwards.
request that we find out from the administration what the cost of replacing the turf would be, the pellets would be, the track, and the tennis courts? So we
Tennis
could,
courts, I'm
well, if Tanya has any of that, so
she
then,
might have it.
then we have an idea of where we would put as far as like a recommended
Mhm.
cap or whatnot on that.
So, can you just circulate that information to the
Sure.
full committee, and that way everybody has it, and you guys can do with it what you need? And that way we can just get it out. That's a great suggestion. Okay, I think we're good to go. And at this point, we have an executive session that is scheduled, and it's to review executive session minutes. So we cannot do that in public, and I need someone to do me the favor of reading and getting us in there, making the motion. Do you have it, Mark?
I have the,
You can do it.
I move that we move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to to review and discuss draft executive session minutes of April 26th, 2017, May 10th, 2017, September 13, 2017, November 29, 2017, December 6, 2017,
Two sets.
2 sets, and to do so because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of this public body, and the chair so declares. The committee will adjourn from executive session and not return to open session.
All right, and a second. Neil, okay, Kathy, before we do this, I need you to indicate that you are in a room that is secure and no one else is in the room or listening to the call. And yes, that is that's not just me. Are you in a room alone and no one else can hear this call?
I will see when we begin.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Steve,
Yes.
and Lynn, and Mark,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Neil,
Yes.
and Elise,
Yes.
Yeah,
and
Neil
me,
did.
yes.
Neil
Yes.
seconded it.
All right, thank you, everyone.